Hello again, everyone. I'm going to finish off Denver week with a look at the Broncos of the NFL. So, obviously, very successful team in Denver. 12-4 last year, playing in the AFC West. It's a solid division. Chiefs and Chargers both last year went 9-7. Really, the Raiders are the only team that aren't going to compete in this division. 3-13, and the Raiders have been awful for as long as I can remember anyway. So really this is a three-team division. Don't necessarily think it's the Broncos division that they can just run away with. I do think the Chiefs and Chargers will compete in this division. I do think a 10-6 record is going to be bare minimum to win this division. A 12-4 record last year is obviously fantastic, and that's why the Broncos did have a very successful year. And how they were able to win this division is by having a very solid record. But the Chiefs and Chargers, I think, have gotten better. I think they got solid teams as well, and it's going to require a 10-6 bare minimum season to win this division again. And it's not necessarily going to be the Broncos who just run away with this division. So keep an eye on this division. Broncos are going to be I think heavy favorites still to win the division, but not necessarily guaranteed to win this division before the season starts. What makes a successful team, obviously, is the guy who is controlling the ball and the pace of the offense at the quarterback position. And the Broncos have a guaranteed first ballot Hall of Famer, in my opinion. One of the best quarterbacks currently in the league. He's ranked number 5 on the top 100 players of the 2015 list, Peyton Manning. He's 39 years old. He's been in the league for 18 years. But last year he proved that he can still compete and still produce for a team. He had just over 4,700 passing yards, 39 touchdowns to 15 picks, and only 17 sacks. So very, very solid numbers from this guy. Obviously a guy that can lead a team into the playoffs, and a great guy that the Broncos have controlling the helm. Why he's so successful, obviously having some great receiving weapons for sure helps, but having a very good offensive line helps as well. Only getting sacked 17 times, a sack a game, is very, very good. At his age, obviously with the neck surgeries and stuff, he can't make plays with his legs. And if you see this guy getting sacked 30 plus times in a season, he is not going to be successful. He's going to be burnt out, and injuries are going to affect his abilities come mid-season. So you got to find a way to keep this guy on his feet, keep the defense away from him, and you have to have a solid offensive line to do that. And I think they do have a very solid offensive line. Obviously, with Clowney being hurt, that's a big dent on the offensive line, but I think everybody else on the team is still very solid. When you look at the offensive line, Ryan Harris is the veteran of the group. He's been in the league for 9 years. Chris Clark and Vasquez, another tackle and guards, they've been in the league for 7 years. And then Shelley Smith, their other offensive guard, has been in the league for 6 years. They did draft Ty Sambrailo out of Colorado State with their second round pick, 59th overall, who is an offensive tackle. Don't necessarily think he's here to take Harris's job from him, but I think he is a guy that can step in when Harris decides to retire or leave. Once you get an offensive tackle who's been in the league approaching that 10-year mark, probably means you're going to have to find somebody to replace him. You can do it through free agency, but those guys are going to expect a lot of money and to get paid. Obviously, the Broncos are going to be a destination a lot of players are going to want to go to. It's a successful team. That's where you're going to get some action in the free agent market for sure, but they're going to expect the big money. You should get a guy in the second, third round who isn't going to expect first round top 10 pick money. You can probably sign him for a very reasonable number, and you got a guy that can step in for you, because clearly if you're drafting them that high, you think he has starting talent. So that's what they got for their offensive line there. Again, Peyton Manning numbers last year. Can't deny he's still a successful quarterback and can still perform with this team, but you have to have a couple solid running backs as well. You can't have a 12-4 record and not have any run game. So I think Anderson and Hillman are a solid 1-2 combination for this team. Anderson last year just had under 850 yards. Hillman only played in half a season, had 434 yards. So I don't think these guys are 1,000-yard rushers. I think they could be on other teams, but I just think with the receiving weapons that the Broncos have, they don't need to have a 1,000-yard rusher. They just have to have two guys who can be productive with the run game, can keep the defense on edge, and can run the ball, 20 out of the 50 offensive plays in a game if you can get to that many, and just be successful. Get that 4 to 5 yards of a carry, you're good to go. You don't need a 1,000-yard rusher, because you're not going to get that opportunity to be a 1,000-yard rusher. You're not going to get that many carries in a game with the receiving core they have. Obviously, Julius Thomas, the tight end, left, but I think they've actually upgraded in that position even without him. Brought in Owen Daniels, who played for the Ravens last year, who 527 yards and 4 touchdowns for him. They also drafted Jeff Heuerman, who's a tight end out of Ohio State in the third round. Normally, you don't see tight ends taken in the first round. It's one of those positions that isn't very high on a team's need list. And that's because you can find other position players that you can convert into a tight end, whether that be a running back, a wide receiver, a quarterback, Tim Tebow a few years ago, people were saying maybe they can convert him to a tight end, just as an example. So it's not necessarily a position that we're going to use our first round pick to draft a tight end. Some teams do, but usually the elite tight ends are taken in that second, third round, and that's what I think Heuerman is. I think he's got an opportunity to learn from Peyton Manning, great veteran quarterback, learn from Owen Daniels, great veteran tight end, so a veteran at his specific position, and can step up for this team, and he's going to get some looks, he's going to get some reps on this team for sure. But looking at the receivers, obviously Wes Welker's gone, veteran hit there for sure, but you still have Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, who last year combined for over 3,000 yards. Thomas had 1,619 yards, Sanders had 1,404 yards. If you can find a 1-2 receiving combination that can get over 3,000 yards, that's fantastic. Most teams maybe have a 1,000-yard receiver, maybe two, but you're not going to see a guy that can go over 1,600 yards and a guy that can go over 1,400 yards very frequently. So, like I said, 3,000 yards from two guys, most teams are going to need 4 or 5 guys to get 3,000 yards. So that's fantastic. They got a great 1-2 punch there. You throw in Owen Daniels, who's a decent tight end receiver, draft Heuerman from the tight end position in the 3rd round. You're solid. You put it. These other receivers are going to get looks because Thomas and Sanders are going to get double teams. So guys like Burse and Caldwell and Fowler and all, they got tons of receivers obviously on the roster right now. They're going to get looks because cornerbacks are going to be concerned about Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. That opens it up for all these other players. So very solid offense on this team. Looking at the defense, I think they got a very solid cornerbacks position for sure. When you look at Talib, Roby, and Harris, I'll talk about those 3 guys. Roby last year, 65 tackles with a couple picks. Talib, 64 tackles with 4 picks. And then Harris had 54 tackles with 3 picks. So 9 picks among those 3 cornerbacks. Very solid. And obviously playing in a very tough division, you need to have guys who can stop the opposition's receiving core and can make an impact on the defensive side of the ball, and those guys are definitely going to do that. When you look at the safeties, Ward was second in the team in total tackles last year with 74 tackles. He had a couple sacks as well as a couple picks, so great safety for them out of that position. Linebacking core, I think, is very solid as well. Obviously, DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller are the 1-2 punch that those guys bring. Ware, even as a veteran last year, he still had 40 tackles with 10 sacks. Von Miller had 59 tackles with 14 sacks. So you got 24 combined sacks just between those 2 guys. You draft Shane Ray, who's listed as a defensive end out of Missouri. On their depth chart, they list him as a linebacker. So we'll see how he plays in the NFL. Sometimes you see guys listed as a defensive end in college. They get to the NFL, they can't compete against NFL caliber offensive linemen, so they're not making an impact on their team, so they're converted to a linebacker, or vice versa. They can, maybe be elite at a linebacker position, but the team needs a more speedy defensive end, so they push him there. But I think Ray is going to be great at the linebacker position. Again, Ware is a veteran, so maybe you bring him in to replace Ware when he decides to retire, but he's not slowing down at all. Still 10 sacks last year from a veteran, so it's not like you need to replace him, but I think it's a great guy for this team to pick up in Shane Ray. Looking at their other defensive linemen, you got Jackson, who had 42 combined tackles last year. Wolf had 35 combined tackles, so I think they have a very solid defense. I think pressure to the quarterback comes from the linebacking position, not so much the defensive line, and the cornerbacks are definitely skilled enough to contain and force their opposition into tough situations. And if you get 2 guys, like I said, with Miller and Ware, who combined for 24 sacks last year, you bring in a guy like Shane Ray, I could easily see 30-plus sacks from those 3 guys if they stay healthy and keep going as long as they stay healthy, like I said, and as long as Ware doesn't decrease his playing ability, which after last year I don't see that happening. They'd have a very solid linebacking core and some solid cornerbacks as well. But their offense is definitely the strength of this team. I think this offense has the ability to go out and score 30 points on any given night on average. So as long as this defense can keep the opposition to under 20, to under 21 points, so if this defense can keep the opposition under 3 touchdowns a game, I definitely think this offense has the weapons to score 4-plus touchdowns, 3-plus touchdowns a game easily. Again, health is going to be big. As long as Peyton Manning stays healthy, as long as Thomas and Sanders stay healthy, this team's going to go far, and I think they have another 12-4 record on the horizon, and a potential ability to win this AFC West division again. But again, don't disregard the Chiefs and the Chargers. Definitely going to be an interesting division to watch this year. Thank you again all for watching this week on my thoughts on the Nuggets of the NBA and today the Broncos of the NFL. And I appreciate all the support. You can follow me on Twitter at GHAM614, and I'll be back next week with a new city and new teams. Thank you again. Bye-bye.